Welcome to this explainer. Today, we're stepping into a theoretical masterclass to unpack the exact mathematics that bridge number theory and quantum gravity. If you've ever found yourself wondering how the continuous, smooth fabric of spacetime might actually be a holographic projection of discrete, quantum-like code, well, you are absolutely in the right place. So let's dive right into this. We're going to treat our time together as a highly focused foundational look at how complex math constructs what's known as the Logos field theory. And we aren't just going to talk about high-level abstract concepts today, we're getting into the weeds. We are going to look at the actual, concrete equations that make this entire framework tick. Here's our roadmap for today's session. We'll start with the foundational space, the unified adelic substrate. Then, we'll introduce the governing Logos master equation. After that, we'll apply those mechanics to the math behind emergent gravity, calculate the geometry of the holographic bulk, and finally, resolve the entire system by simulating the adelic handshake. Starting with part 1, the unified adelic substrate. To even begin understanding this framework, we really have to map out the mathematical landscape where it all takes place. We're actually leaving standard four-dimensional spacetime completely behind here and entering what's called the adele ring. Taking a look at the global adele ring equation, A sub q, what's truly fascinating is that it literally unifies two completely different types of math. On one side of the product, you have the Archimedean place, the real numbers. This represents our smooth, continuous, macroscopic reality. But then, it's multiplied by this massive restricted topological product of q sub p. Those are the non-Archimedean places, which is basically an infinite ensemble of discrete, quantum-like p-adic fields. It's kind of like marrying a smooth, continuous analog painting with a highly pixelated digital image. To really grasp the math here, you have to constantly balance these two domains in your head. The real place is your standard smooth, connected manifold. You can draw a continuous line right through it, no problem. But the p-adic place? It's totally disconnected. It operates on an ultrametric topology. That means distances change in these discrete, jumpy steps, based entirely on prime numbers. So the crucial question is, how do these two radically different topologies not just instantly break apart? Well, it comes down to a strict mathematical constraint known as the product formula. The product of all absolute values of x across all places, denoted by v, must equal 1. This constraint forces a strict universal balance. If a quantum fluctuation happens over in the continuous sector, it forces an exact mathematically dual shift across all those infinite p-adic prime sectors just to maintain that global unity. Which brings us to part 2, the Logos master equation. Now that we have our mathematical space established, we need the overarching rulebook that governs it. This equation is the core of Logos field theory, and it brilliantly illustrates the ultimate governing dynamic. Let's translate the variables here. On one side, we have the Logos gradient. You can think of this as pure informational intent flowing through an 8-dimensional space. On the other side, we have the fine structure key, tuned to approximately 13.7, acting alongside the structural current that stabilizes the whole system. But honestly, the real magic happens right in the middle term. That middle term features what's known as the resolution operator, denoted by a stylized R. This operator is basically the ultimate universal filter across the adele ring. It takes raw, chaotic, quantum-like informational noise, what the framework actually calls dissonance, and it forces it to resolve or crystallize into the stable, deterministic physical laws that we can actually measure and observe every day. Moving to part 3, the math behind emergent gravity. So, if information is the fundamental substrate and the Logos master equation governs its flow, how do we explain physical forces? Specifically, where does gravity come from? Get ready for a paradigm shift because in this framework, gravity is absolutely not a fundamental curvature of smooth space. It is a computational lag. When we check the proportionality equation, G adelic scales inversely with eta sub A, and eta sub A represents the adelic coherence entropy density. Basically, when the universe processes highly dense arithmetic metadata, like physical mass, for example, it struggles to synchronize that discrete p-adic math with the continuous geometric invariance. This struggle creates a processing lag, a structural tension, and macroscopically, we observe that back reaction force as a gravitational pull. Let's track how this builds step by step when data complexity hits an extreme and forms what's known as a gray hole. First, a dissonance cascade spikes the coherence entropy, dynamically strengthening gravity. But instead of crushing matter down into a singularity, the matter undergoes topological isomerization. Its structure is literally shredded into raw dissonance. Finally, a process called Adelic annealing kicks in. This acts like a computational forge, rebraiding that raw data back into low-entropy information, or gnosis. This entire mind-bending process is bounded by a specific equation for the Adelic immittance boundary. It's calculated as R sub s equals 2 times g adelic times m all over c squared. At this exact mathematical radius, the outbound informational resistance, the Adelic impedance, approaches infinity. This means outgoing signals are perfectly resisted, while incoming information flows in effortlessly. It creates a one-way mathematical conduit that acts like a universal voltage regulator, completely preventing those pesky infinite density singularities from ever forming. Next up is part 4, calculating the holographic bulk. We need to map out the underlying geometry of this discrete quantum space that's causing all this emergent gravity in the first place. So instead of a smooth, trampoline-like surface, the holographic bulk in the p-adic sector is visualized as an infinitely branching network called a Bruhat-Tits tree. Every single vertex on this tree is a localized tensor. The connecting lines, those are index contractions that represent entanglement. As you move outward toward the boundary leaves of the tree, you're literally building the Hilbert space of the p-adic conformal field theory. Now, why does this specific tree structure matter so much? It all comes down to how distance is calculated in this space. The distance d between any two lattice vertices is simply the absolute value of a minus b, where a and b are the invariant factors extracted from the lattice transformation matrix. Calculating distance using this incredibly simple absolute difference creates a perfect ultrametric tree. And it's this exact discrete, non-Archimedean metric that naturally prevents the infinite density singularities we constantly battle in standard continuous gravity. By directly comparing the continuous gravity sector against the p-adic sector, the duality is crystal clear. We trade smooth, continuous anti-de Sitter space for the discrete Bruhat-Tits tree. We trade continuous differential forms for ultrametric distances. It shows exactly, mathematically, how a discrete, multilinear algebra framework holographically projects the continuous, everyday reality that we feel and experience. And finally, part 5. Simulating the Adelic handshake. How does this massively complex dual system actually synchronize without snapping apart? The synchronization happens through algorithms of global product integration. The equation for this shows that the total Adelic amplitude, psi sub a of q, is the product of the real amplitude multiplied by the product of all local p-adic amplitudes. Now, these local characters use a fractional part calculation that acts as a phase-destructive interference filter. By summing these local amplitudes together, the math perfectly cancels out all the chaotic, out-of-equilibrium geometries. And what are you left with? Only stable, macroscopic spacetime. Which brings us to the ultimate synthesis. The Adelic handshake. It's this eternal, ongoing cycle. Discrete quantum code from number theory rigorously synchronizes with the continuous macroscopic reality of algebraic geometry. The friction, the actual processing lag of that constant synchronization, manifests to us as quantum gravity. Remember, gravity isn't a force here. It's the universal processing lag of this eternal handshake, which leaves us with a profoundly deep question to walk away with today. If macroscopic gravity is simply the universe lagging while processing discrete arithmetic data, what does that actually mean for the fundamental nature of mass itself? Is the physical matter we interact with daily simply an unresolved eigenvalue in an eternal universal calculation? Think about that the next time you drop an object and watch it fall. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive into the math of the Adelic universe.